Early this fall, our distinguished President David Hardin took our video camera with him to Vermont and spent some time with Frederick Buechner at his farm. And from that interview, we have put together this segment to share with you this evening.
In Whistling in the Dark, one of the topics you take up is dying, a subject which makes a lot of us very nervous, especially as we age. What do you say?
Yes, and as much as I remember it, I don't think I try to give any kind of theological statement about it, whatever that might be, but I think I just talk about the image that always comes to my mind when I think of my dying, and it's so vivid and so recurrent that I have a feeling maybe it has something to do with what the experience must be like, and that is the experience of flying. I'm an uneasy flyer, and I always have the same picture in my mind of the crowded airport on a bad day, slippery runway and poor visibility and all those announcements, sort of menacing sounds coming over the loudspeaker system, people smoking too much. You get in the plane and there's snow on the wings and the thing sort of rattles off down the runway and it goes through that awful sort of turbulence that you go through climbing up. And then ultimately, if you go far enough, you suddenly come out into the extraordinary dazzle of the sun, the great peace of it. And so many things that seemed important are no longer important at all, and it's the beginning of a whole new thing. And I so much picture this as what the experience of dying must be like. The terror, scared out of your wits, as you rattle on up through, beyond, and then the coming out into the sun. And that the sun is always shining. I have to remind, it sounds like a corny song, but that no matter how wretched the weather, no matter how threatening the storm, if you go up far enough, you leave that behind, and the world hangs there like a jewel below you, and the sky is blue above you. The other thing I think about when I think about dying is I wrote a novel called Godric about an old English saint. And some of the things that I found him saying, almost in spite of me rather than because of me, have stuck in my mind. And one thing he says in that book is, he says, thinking of dying as loss, he says, what's lost is nothing to what's found, and all the death that ever was set next to life would scarcely fill a cup. And if one can draw comfort from one's own words, which are not one's own words quite, I do from those. I think there is to me a felt truth in them.
Fred, you and I have both looked at alcoholism, and we've dealt with it within our own families. I'm a very real fan of Alcoholics Anonymous and all their anonymous organizations. Let us know what you think.
I spent, as I perhaps said to you earlier, I spent all last winter going to meetings of Al-Anon, which I'm sure everybody knows is for the families of alcoholics. And it really, I think I can truthfully say, it was one of the most, maybe the most nourishing, prolonged, most spiritually nourishing experience of my life. I'll simply say that. And it's hard to describe it to anyone who's never been to it, but what it consists of is a group of human beings coming together saying, we simply cannot lead fully human lives either because of alcohol or because of overeating or because of having some alcoholic in the family or because of drugs or whatever. We cannot live fully human lives without help from each other and, as they say, avoiding the word God because that would tend to bring in this religion against that religion, without the help of each other and our higher power. And they have no agenda, they have no specific program, they have no building, they have no budget, they have no hierarchy, nothing. They simply have each other and their higher power. And here are a group of people coming together simply speaking out of their own experience, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, listening to others say the same kind of thing, drawing comfort and hope from the fact that others who have been through the same kind of darkness have emerged from it. Nobody lectures anybody else, which I love. There's no sermonizing. Nobody tells people what to do or what to think. And also acknowledging that they could not survive without what they call their higher power. And I used to sort of rebel against that sort of bloodless phrase, higher power. But what I like about it is partly the word God has been misused by people like you and me and others for so many generations that it's become a kind of dead word. A, you get away from using the word God, and B, the fact that the word power is in it. I think people forget that God has power to change, to transform, to heal. He isn't simply someone to whom one keeps giving praise and so on.
There's also a sense of trust.
Absolutely. The anonymity, of course, being part of it. You can speak what's on your heart. The other thing that moves me so much is that a person in any one of these groups, an alcoholic or a drug addict or an overeater or whatever other group you happen to be in, Al-Anon, wherever you are in this world, if you're in trouble, if only in the human sense in trouble, you need only look up to see where that meeting is, and you know that there's going to be a group of strangers who are not strangers who will be there for you, to share their lives with you, to give practical help if need be, and to pray with you, to pray for you. And I've often thought, as a Christian, at least in my part of the world, if you were similarly in trouble in a foreign land or a strange city, would it occur to you to look up the nearest church and say, I'm in trouble, I need help, and B, if you did so, what in God's name would you find? And furthermore, if the answer to that, as I suspect, is you would find a sort of uneasy silence, people thinking you were looking for some sort of a handout, then what is the church all about? Because it seems to me that would be the essence of what the church is all about. It is about sin and grace, emptiness and fullness, people who are in great need and the great source of meeting that need in community with each other and with God. And if that's not being met, then all the programs and the buildings and the TV shows and the what have you, the every member canvas, the so forth, are worthless, or so secondary as to be worthless.
In Whistling in the Dark, you talk about tears. Tell us what you said.
The last time I had unexpected tears in my eyes, of all things, we went to, it's called Marineland in Florida, and the dolphins were, I guess they're whales, killer whales. They suddenly began racing around at great speed and then leapt out of the water. These great glittering bodies and these young people who were sort of there throwing fish at them, and there was something, it was an image of paradise, I thought. The innocence of beasts and the innocence of human beings, but play together. And whatever is shadowy and sad and broken and lost in the world was 1,000,000 miles away. And I felt homesick almost for a home I'd never known. And the curious thing was I thought, how poetic, how sensitive, how marvelous of me to have wept those tears. And then I spoke later, and my daughter had tears and my wife had tears. And who would have guessed it, watching these great creatures leap out of the water?